Welcome. You are listening to the regular Faroes News Report.
Today we're unpacking some pretty critical developments. We're looking at international relations, some major domestic governance changes, and a lot of public debate.
It's been a busy week. We're going to start with the straight facts, just the news headlines. First up is the Faroes-Russia 2026 Fishing Pact.
Then we'll cover the new Faroes sanctions legislation.
After that, a review of 2025 from the Faroes Shipping and Navigator Association. A lot going on there.
And we'll round out the news with a look at the workforce crisis and a sharp criticism from a disability rights group.
Then in the second half, we'll shift to the opinion and commentary section.
Yes, we'll analyze the debate on public tendering, a fascinating piece on AI and propaganda, and a look at what some are calling the Putin Vaccine in public discourse.
And finally, a political analysis of the Sjálvstýri Party. Is it moving to the extreme left?
So let's get into it.
Let's start in the North Atlantic. The Faroe Islands and Russia have finalized their fishing agreement for 2026.
This is a huge deal. I mean, this pact has been a cornerstone of the economy since, 1977? Securing it is always a top priority.
In a core of it, the fundamental exchange, that's still intact.
It is. Faroes trawlers get their cod quotas in the Barents Sea, and in return, Russian trawlers get access to pelagic stocks, blue whiting, herring, mackerel in Faroes waters.
But I understand there's a key change for 2026.
A pretty significant one. The overall quotas are smaller, noticeably so. And the reason given is the biological situation of several of these key stocks.
So, concerns about fish populations, but the deal is done. That's remarkable given the geopolitical climate.
It really is. But it seems to have come with a pretty high price this time, measured in sanctions.
Right, let's talk about that. Starting January 1st, 2026, two major Russian shipping companies are banned. Murman Seafood and Norebo JSC.
And this is not just a token gesture. These companies are banned from Faroes waters from their ports. It's a full exclusion.
And these aren't just any companies. The EU had already sanctioned them, right?
Exactly. On very serious grounds. We're talking suspicions of espionage and being a threat to security.
So this decision, it must have been based on some serious intelligence.
It appears so. The Faroes Foreign Ministry only confirmed the ban after the Police Intelligence Service, PET, gave a briefing to the Lagting's Foreign Committee. It signals that, while the economic deal had to happen, the security risk from certain actors is now just too high to ignore.
And the political reaction.
The Minister of Raw Materials and Business Affairs, Eiríkur Jakobsstovu, he expressed satisfaction. He said it provides certainty for the industry, which is, of course, the main goal. Stability.
Stability, but, as you said, within a new legal framework. This brings us to the broader sanctions legislation that was just published.
Yes, in the Kungur Blablavis. It took effect on January 1st, 2026. It's a big amendment to the restrictive measures related to Russia's actions in Ukraine.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. Paragraph 3A seems to be the key. Asset freezing.
That's the heart of it. It mandates that any and all assets owned, held, controlled by individuals or companies listed in these new schedules, 1A and 1B, they have to be frozen.
And the language is pretty strict. No assets can be made available directly or indirectly.
Very strict. But, and this is where it gets really complex and political, there's a carve-out.
An exception.
A very specific one. Paragraph 3A, subsection 3. It explicitly states these asset freezing rules do not apply to fishing in international waters that's been authorized by the bilateral fishing agreement.
So that's the compromise. The fishing rights themselves are protected from the sanctions.
That's it. It allows that core economic exchange to continue even while the sanctions target other parts of the Russian state and economy.
But that exception, it's one way, right? It doesn't apply to Faroes entities.
Absolutely correct. It's a shield for the Russian side of the fishing deal, not the Faroe side.
Now, beyond the asset freezes, there's also an export ban on luxury goods.
Yes, paragraph 13A. It prohibits selling, supplying, or exporting luxury goods from a specific list to Russia, or even for use on Russian-flagged ships.
And this applies to items over a certain value.
Over 300 euros. There are some exceptions for personal items, but it's a pretty broad ban that mirrors what the EU and others have done.
And if you look at the lists of who is being sanctioned, it's quite targeted.
Very. You see GRU Unit 29155, which is linked to sabotage all over Europe. You have the disinformation outlet, Race of Europe.
And, of course, the two shipping companies we just mentioned, Norebo and Murman Seafood.
Right, and also the General Radio Frequency Center, the GRFC. The reasons cited are things like cyber attacks, disinformation, undermining stability. So the Faroes are now actively targeting Russia's information warfare machine.
That sets a very clear international stage. Let's pivot now to the domestic situation because it sounds like there are some serious challenges brewing in the labor market. We can start with the Faroe Shipping and Navigator Association, the FSN, and their 2025 review.
The FSN review is, well, it's a story of two halves. On one side, you have a lot of success. Leadership is stable, and Finnur Geralali is still chairman.
And they secured some good contract deals in 2025.
Some really strong ones. Solid wage increases over 2 years, a higher overtime rate, and a couple of really nice quality of life wins for their members.
Like the online courses.
Exactly. Online courses taken from home now count as regular paid course days, and they got a new rule for masters and mates, an extra paid day off for every 24-hour deviation from their set tour length. That's a big deal.
It sounds like a strong negotiating year then, but you said it's a story of two halves.
It is, because on the other side, they took some major losses in the Permanent Arbitration Court, the FASTA Jeddaredi.
And that's the final word on these labor disputes.
It's the ultimate body. And they lost two big cases. One argued that the changeover day on commercial ships should grant both a salary and an earned day off. They lost.
Ouch. What was the other one?
It was about a service ban on the replacement ferry Galaxy. The court ruled it was an unauthorized strike. Another loss.
Two big losses like that must really shake their confidence in the system.
It clearly did. The chairman expressed, real caution about using the arbitration court going forward. That could mean we see more old-fashioned, maybe more confrontational labor disputes down the line.
But there was something even more alarming in that report, wasn't there? Something about demographics.
This, I think, is the real headline. The average age of members in the FSN's collective insurance scheme is 61.
61. That's not just an average age, that's a demographic cliff.
It's a massive strategic problem. You can win great contracts today, but if your average member is 61 years old, your association is staring down a huge recruitment crisis. It signals a future weakness, no matter how strong the contracts look now.
The report also dug into the fishing agreements themselves, particularly for pelagic species.
Yes, the bottom trawler fleet did okay in 2025. But pelagic fishing is much more complicated. Mackerel quotas, for instance, were cut severely.
But the prices are high, so that helps.
It helps, but the chairman pointed to a fundamental imbalance. The mackerel agreement only includes the Faroes, UK, EU, and Norway.
Which leaves out who?
3 key players: Russia, Iceland, and Greenland. They're outside the agreement, so they aren't forced to cut their catch. The FSN says this gives them a huge advantage.
And the criticism didn't stop with mackerel. There were issues with herring, too.
Big issues. The deal with Norway involves exchanging quota for fishing rights, but the herring in Norwegian waters is smaller, lower value, and it's a longer trip to get there.
But the real fire was aimed at the Iceland deal, I take it.
It was, and you could see why. The chairman was very explicit. Faroe ships are barred from key fishing areas in Icelandic waters, while Icelandic ships get unrestricted access in Faroes waters. He called it a clear, unjustifiable imbalance.
So if we zoom out from just the shipping sector, this labor problem, it seems to be everywhere. We have this consensus report from the National Treasury, the National Bank, and Statistics Faroe Islands.
And they all say the same thing. The Faroes workforce is at a crossroads.
What's the core issue?
It's a skewed population. The engine of the problem is that too few young people are returning home after they go abroad to study.
And that starves the local market of an educated workforce.
Exactly. And the immediate result is that local industry has to import foreign labor just to keep things running.
Which creates its own pressures. At the same time, welfare services are under growing strain.
And there are fewer people available to actually do the work. It's a classic sustainability crisis in the making.
Did the institutions offer any solutions?
They mentioned 2 general paths. 1, a massive effort to retain young people. And 2, a heavy reliance on technology to find efficiency gains. Without those 2 things, they warn a sustainable welfare society is at risk.
Which is a perfect transition to the criticism from the disability rights group, MEGD. They're talking about that exact welfare system.
They are. Their chairwoman, Asa Olsen, is demanding the government finally implement a long-term disability policy, a proper welfare plan.
And this isn't a new demand.
Not at all. The UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities called for this plan back in 2014 and then repeated the demand in 2024.
And here we are, at the end of 2025.
And still no plan exists. And MEGD sees this isn't just a policy paper. It translates into daily struggles for people with disabilities, fighting for access to, basic needs, employment, education, public life.
They gave a specific, very recent example of what they see as a step backward.
They did. During Christmas 2025, they noted that broadcast on the national channel, Kring Varpi Faroe Church Services holiday programs mostly lacked any text or sign language interpretation. They see it as a sign of a negative shift in attitude.
Okay, that covers the factual reporting. Let's move now into the commentary and opinion section. And we start with a really fundamental debate about how the public sector should do business, specifically public tendering.
Right. This was sparked by comments from the former chairman of the Economic Council, Frode Magnussen. He questioned the heavy reliance on these formal tendering processes, the utbud.
And his view was apparently backed by the CEO of Bakkafrost. What's the core of their argument?
As reported by commentator Kim Hansen, their position is basically that the public sector should act more like the private sector, focus on the best possible outcome, the best result, rather than being tied to rigid procedures that can inflate costs.
Efficiency over process.
Exactly. But Kim Hansen offered a very powerful counterargument.
Which is?
That the public sector simply cannot have the same priorities as a private business. Its primary goals have to be things like trust, equal treatment, and transparency.
And the tendering process is the mechanism for that trust.
That's his point. It might be slower, it might sometimes be more expensive, but it creates and maintains public trust. And in his view, that's a much greater social goal than just saving a few kroners.
Did Hansen offer any practical ways to improve the system?
He did. He suggested better training for procurement staff. And crucially, he argued for moving the whole procurement function away from the National Treasury.
Why? A conflict of interest.
A potential one, yes. The Treasury is one of the biggest buyers of IT and consulting services. So having them also run the procurement system for everyone else, it creates issues. His final warning was simple. Be careful taking business advice from business leaders, because their world and the world of public governance have fundamentally different rules.
Let's move to our next piece. This one is a fascinating blend of digital anxiety and geopolitical commentary from Birgir Kroes.
This all started when Kroes received an excerpt from a book by the French demographer Emmanuel Todd, The Defeated West.
A controversial book.
Very. It argues that Putin has effectively already won against what Todd calls the nihilistic West, and it frames NATO and Europe as the actual aggressors in Ukraine.
So Kroes is reading this, and then something strange happens with his computer.
He was looking up Todd on Wikipedia, and he realized that Microsoft's Copilot chatbot could see what page he had open, without him ever giving it permission.
And he called this a technological invasion.
He did. He explicitly compared it to Putin in Ukraine. The chatbot even offered to summarize the page for him, or, and I'm quoting here, turn the information into a poetic, radio-friendly narrative.
That's a bit unsettling.
Deeply. But he actually used the AI to translate the complex political text, and the result was a very clear summary of Todd's argument, that the conflict is essentially a Russian defensive war forced by NATO expansion.
So what was Kroes's final takeaway from this experience?
His reflection was on education. He suggests that this kind of technical invasion poses a real challenge. He advises schools to focus more on philosophy and critical thinking, rather than just being fascinated with new tech, especially when students are often banned from using that same AI in their own work.
That leads us right into another observation from Birgir Kroes, where he looks at what he calls the Putin vaccine.
Yes, he's observing what he terms a total coherence between two groups in Faroe's public life.
And those groups are?
On one side, you have the people who were strongly against what they saw as forced vaccination during the COVID pandemic.
Okay. And on the other?
People who are now, in his words, sworn supporters of Putin, who see him as saving Ukraine from corruption.
And Kroes is saying there's a complete overlap between these two groups.
That's his observation. He frames it a bit satirically, wondering if there's some secret Putin vaccine going around. He also criticizes the Faroes media, Kring Varpi, for what he sees as a lack of factual foreign policy coverage, forcing people to rely on other Nordic broadcasters.
And commentary from others supported this view.
Yes. One commenter noted the shift as incomprehensible, pointing out the irony that the political right, which historically was fiercely anti-Russia, now has elements that support Putin.
The commentary even named a specific political party.
It did. It claimed this ideological current can be seen among prominent politicians in the Folkflokkeren, who blankly reject measures against Russia. The broader point being made is that these ideological undercurrents need to be brought into the light because they could have very real political consequences.
For our final piece, we have a political analysis from Samuel Matras Christensen. He's looking at the Sjálvstýri, the self-government party, and asking a very pointed question.
The question is whether the party is abandoning its moderate history and making a play for the extreme left.
Let's get some context. Historically, where has Sjálvstýri sat on the political spectrum?
Traditionally, it's been a moderate center party, often described as the glue that held coalitions together. But they've been in a major slump, out of government for 10 years, and they lost their seat in the 2022 election.
What are the polls looking like for them now?
Not good. Recent polls have them at just 1.1%. You need around 3% for a seat. Their visibility is so low, they're being called a one-man army.
And that's likely driving this potential shift in strategy. What specific policies are being pointed to as left-wing?
The analyst finds their recent proposals counterintuitive for a party that has always defended private property. He cites two things: a proposal to introduce a property tax on second homes, and the use of rhetoric about revolution.
Revolution. That's strong language for a historically moderate party.
It is. So the ultimate question the analyst poses is this: is Sjálvstýri making a calculated gamble? Are they trying to storm the castle and fill a perceived vacuum on the extreme left because they know they just can't compete in the crowded center anymore?
It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy if that's what's happening.
It certainly is. The political world is now waiting to see their next big policy announcement, which is supposed to be about sustainability and welfare. That will tell us a lot.
And that brings us to the end of our report. We've covered everything from international sanctions and fishing quotas to deep domestic debates on the economy, technology, and political identity.
A week that really shows the Faroes navigating some very complex internal pressures while trying to manage an equally complex international environment.
Thank you for joining us for the regular Faroes News Report.
We have reviewed the latest facts and perspectives derived directly from the source material available this week.
Like and subscribe to Palsfundamentals for more content like this. Sources linked below.